Good afternoon all again, and welcome to this session of this international conference on the Holy Grail in academic publishing, advanced research methods, and proposal writing. We've covered a lot of grounds before in terms of the philosophy of what to do, the concepts of global corporate academicism, how they extend traditional approaches, and how they confer on us affordances of being able to make more impact through our work across academia, industry, government, and wider society. We've seen also how using some of the systems that we work with can enable us as academics to enhance our research, our integration of knowledge, our applications, and our scholarship of teaching itself. We've also seen how best to actually position these elements within a learning session in the classroom, for instance, through what we call reverse pedagogy. But this section is about how to use our understanding of the elements of the research methods canvas to develop a better way to write academic papers in order to enable those papers to have more impact in society. I'm just giving an example, which I'm sending to you later on, of how an academic paper written to those standards can be used to create different forms of knowledge, the publications themselves, in journals, in books, which not only earn us promotions in our different disciplines, but also enable us to make more impact in these fields that we're talking about, the global cure health. And at the same time, enable us, as I say, to be closer to achieving the Oseloka vision we talked about earlier, far more than traditional approach can enable us to do. That's the background to this particular one. This paper is just a paper I wrote. And when I finish writing such papers, I send them out first, then I put them on top of 4 structures we use to create business. And those are the structures I expect also that when you master them, you are going to be using them to generate income in your departments, especially through the centers for the applications of every discipline we recommend to be created in each department, in each higher educational institution. So since I'm going to send you this paper containing those tools, I want to also talk to you about when we finish writing a paper. If you look at the key themes in this paper, you see there are very many, isn't it? Can you see that?
Yes.
I'm using this paper to tell you the qualitative difference between a corporate academic journal paper and what everybody else does in traditional academia. In traditional academia, because the journal houses are trying to make money, they say, oh, only 5 key terms, isn't it? 6 key terms. Mm-hmm. And they force you to stay to that. I know that it's also advantageous, all right? Because it forces you to think of mainly the key things that around which that publication hangs. Is that okay? But what I'm trying to share with you is that it's not helpful, you know? So what I do is, when I write, every single new thing that is a new idea, I capture it as keywords for my own use. So even if when I'm submitting this paper to a certain journal and they want only 5, I can just select 5 of them that I think are more fundamental and send the paper out. But I still retain these ones in my own, because this is my working copy of the paper. This is the paper that does other things for me, apart from getting me a journal publication somewhere. Am I making sense? Good. So the reason for this is that I don't even need to look at the body of this paper in order to talk to you about the merits of this paper. Every single keyword here, together organically, they cover the paper. So if you want me to talk about this paper, what am I going to do? I just start with the first thing there and cover the key constructs and leave you. And when you go to the paper, you start seeing them surfacing, highlighted in black ink, black bold ink, in the document. So this is very often, let me be honest with you, PowerPoints are boring. If you understand the presentation game, it's not always that you need PowerPoints. Keywords are all you need. Talk to them. You move fast. Give the materials to the delegates to go and study, you know. But sometimes, I'm not saying, after all, I've used PowerPoints today, right? Just one main PowerPoint has been used, right? But you can see that every other thing I do, I don't need to do that. Okay. Even in the keynote paper that I presented, I never even wrote anything like a paper. I just went to the flyer and talked to it. That is the capability you gain when you master these games we're playing. All right? So you start being a slave to presentation or schema and talk to people directly from what you know. Looking at the keywords, you cover the entire paper beginning to end. This is why I can present about when I went to Ibadan in 2018, not Ibadan, yes, I mean National Mathematical Center in 2008, invited as a keynote speaker. I came with 3 papers and covered them in the 1 hour I was given. Why? Because I'm not trying to read the papers to guys. I'm trying to work on the key terms and get into the crevices of thinking that led to you. So you can see the keywords, but I'm not going to the paper now. I'm just going to the structures. So let me quickly go to you can see all those, you can see where I'm putting them in bold ink. Can you see that? Good. Can you see the right ensemble, Keo helix, 7-fold ways, transition engineering? This is what I lift and put on top. So even if this paper is 100 pages, I can cover it in 30 minutes conveniently and create topics from the left, right, and center. This is the scholarship we're talking about. You need to know these games. Otherwise, we are just fighting to be promoted. Country is not developed. And because we are senior academics, we are draining the country actually, because we are paid heavily without contributing equivalent value. So let me just leave it that way. Every other instrument is there. I use a lot of schemas. But let's go to even the sweet spot principle I discussed today is in the paper. So you get it. I sent you about 10 papers I've pre-read. You will see these principles repeated. Just to help you to learn this game. And sometimes you can call us to help if you want to develop it further. So there's a lot of that. But let me go to the instruments. Even this research methods canvas is in this paper. It's exactly in this paper. Because I wanted to use this paper to do more stuff. So I put every instrument there. Because it's for me. It's not even... What are the journal houses doing for you? They just publish your paper and so what? Sometimes they even take money from you to... Do you know that some of the people you submit journals to are not even academics? Indians can organize a lot of beautiful looking journals, predatory journals, and charge you $300 per paper. And you're paying. Why? When you can write better papers and use it better to do a lot of stuff. So we need to walk away from being slaves to whoever told us what to do. We need to know how to reason about what best to do as well. So I leave you because this paper is coming to you. Okay. Now let me talk about, because we want the research we are doing, the integration of knowledge we are doing, the applications we are doing, the teaching we are doing, to be able to impact 12 areas of the core higher education business, which I call the 12 pillars. If as an academic, you can hit these 12 pillars, you are a rainmaker. Rainmaker, you'll be raining funds into the department, into the school. That automatically, you qualify to be the VC. You qualify to be the director. Because there's an amount of power you bring to an institution. No politics can deny your rank. No politics. Because everybody will say, it is you that we need. If you've made about 150 million naira. So what I'm trying to say is, the research grants, you write better research grants from the systems we are developing, guest lectures and seminars, research publications, global best practices, curriculum innovations, global standards and markets, robust income generation, entrepreneurship, enterprise development, and employability is already part of the 7 E's, isn't it? And you can see the 7 E's repeated. Your staff development and memberships in all the pillars, your cross-faculty, overall HE perspectives, everything is mobilized using the systems we build. How you lead international schools, symposia, conferences, workshops, which is the kind of thing we're doing today, in partnership with national and global institutions across academia, industry, and government settings. All these are the things, the 12 pillars you ought to be hitting heavily in your career as an academic. Can you honestly tell me how well you do in all of these 12? Currently, as traditional academics, how well are you doing in all these 12? So the question I want to ask now that all of us need to answer later on is question number 1. How well have we been using existing traditional higher education approaches to make maximal contributions to the 12 pillars of higher education listed in this paper? Answer that question one by one. My research grants, my guest lecturers down the line. Have I actually used these things properly in my department? And that is the question I want you to answer. We then get down to those frameworks. The frameworks now we are using are these. You can see. So we are going to live in this appendix for a while, because this is where we are trying to now talk about those integrated protocols for further developing right affordances from this article. I can see a typo there, but I'm going to correct it later. Meaning a system for writing the best papers globally, which we call the common structures for producing highly publishable academic papers. That's number one. Let me take you through that because that's exactly the session we're dealing with now. The magic of this is that if you look at this, it's exactly the boxes in the research methods canvas that are put in sections. So that when you write your papers, you're using them. Tom, you are not new to this, are you? No. This is what we used to write those papers for your thesis, is it not? Or maybe I didn't tell you that that's what we used. Okay, fair enough. But you learn it now. Okay. So at the beginning, you write an abstract that appears to say what you want to do. And that is the first box in the research methods canvas called problem studied and why. Every box is a section now in this, so it's not new. So there is a heavy complementarity or resemblance between the research methods canvas and the structures for writing academic paper. And every abstract covers 4 main things, which are the 4 bullet points in that section. The problem studied and why, the aim and everything, domain knowledge, literature review, methodology, and expected. A summary of all this in the abstract. So the abstract should be a portmanteau summary of the entire paper. And somebody, when you finish writing the paper, you go back and reframe the abstract, depending on what you cover. But you start with it first, write the first draft, but you're going to come back. Introduction, 4 steps. You must tell us the initial problem you're solving with indicative gap in knowledge. Is it not coming from the research method canvas? It is. The aim and the objectives of the paper. But that is now when you have tightened up. When you finish the research, remember you've done the backward look to tighten up your initial framing. So we are working with the revised objective, revised aim, revised research question. Summarize what is your contribution to knowledge, and then the structure of the paper. Number 3, because I'm not going to dwell on this too much, because I've already sent it to you anyway, I will send it as well. So you don't need to bother too much, just listen to the key steps. Under the theoretical background or literature review, you need to have 5 things happening there if you want to write the best papers. You have to present the requisite purpose of theories by the themes in the literature review, as we did in the research methods canvas. You have to elucidate the cutting edge, where current knowledge is in the topic area via critical literature review, which takes place over the entire writing process, just as Professor Odo said. It's an organic process. It's not step-by-step as such. Sometimes you backtrack. There's a lot of back and forth, improving things forward, backwards, until the final thesis is written, from which you are calling the papers later on. You have to condense all these elements of the critical literature into an overarching theoretical framework or conceptual framework. You normally use theoretical framework if it's a quantitative research in sciences, conceptual framework if it's a qualitative or mixed method. But I've seen people who use either, whether it's in science or not. So it's a question of semantic nuance. Number that. So you state the specific research questions which address the revealed gaps in knowledge and slant the objectives towards the core foci of the paper. This is generally the structuring we're talking about. Research methodology, you cover again a couple of things. The strategy, you tell us what is the strategy for the methodology, almost like a philosophy. Now, or as well as also, am I presenting it in one place if it's in a thesis or distributed it across chapters? But in papers, it has to be in one place anyway. But again, even if it's in one place as the main area of constructs in maybe in your paper, later on in other places in conclusion, and you can still bring other references when you're discussing the meaning of your results. All of them are still part of literature. You have to state the methods that you use for every objective, and so on and so forth. You have to now also cover all the key elements of the research onion. What is the research onion actually? The research onion is a concept that have been formulated by researchers that describe all type of choices we make in research. It's in a document that, a more detailed document that we developed, roughly 100 pages. And that, anyway, is coming out in the book we're trying to publish. But you need to also talk about techniques, data collection analysis, the time horizons, whether the data collection is cross-sectional versus longitudinal, the choices you're making, is it a mono method, a multi-method, or a mixed method? The strategies, is it experiment or survey? Is it a case study, actual research, and so on and so forth? You need to talk about approaches. Is my method deductive or inductive? We now talk about the philosophies. positivism, realism, interpretivism, pragmatism, whichever, critical realism, and so on and so forth. There's so many animals in that zoo. I only pick some examples. You also need to succinctly discuss the research philosophy, the ontology, the epistemology, and ontology of the methods. I repeated ontology, don't worry, we're going to touch it. You have to justify the chosen methods by indicating possible alternative methods on why the choices were made. Also, highlight any methodological novelties involved. You then go to data collection. Everything in that research canvas just put down as rows instead of boxes. The same thing with findings. Well, in findings in that map, I didn't put the 5 steps because I wanted the map to be on a page, to be honest. These are the 5 things you must do under findings and discussion to sound coherent enough. You need to explain the findings the way they are. You need to critically link them back to your literature. You need to highlight any improvements in methodology. You need to highlight any promising areas of future research. You need to paint an overall picture of the contribution to knowledge that you have actually delivered. Then you come to contribution to knowledge in detail. You take the 7 steps. The first step there is you have to narrate the grand contribution to knowledge in form of the summative contributions, as I said before, to theory, research, and practice. You then take these into more detail, but still concisely, using the ladder of contributions to knowledge in research framework. Namely, you have to give a more detailed exposition of the theoretical contributions, how they link with the conceptual or theoretical framework, and in answering the research questions, how they address the gaps in identified knowledge, or the gaps identified in knowledge. Now, describe, therefore, the novelty in the results, theoretically, methodologically, and practically. Explain how the results pass beyond theory, especially to lead to models for doing stuff better than currently exists. Explain, therefore, how the results could be said to be prescient to change the field. And then discuss the dissemination plans for the results, their pedagogical merits, the nature of RITLAC's contributions. This is a baby that you need to watch. Contributions, innovations in research, the teaching, the learning, the assessment, the consulting and community service, and the strategies required to effectively train other people in the new insight the results provide. And then you reiterate promising areas of future work. You are now coming to conclusion. In the conclusion, you just say, you tell the reader what you told them you want to tell them, summarizing the problem studied and why you did it, with the key research questions of interest, the domain knowledge, viewed through the conceptual or theoretical frameworks, the signature findings, and the main contribution to knowledge. You then go back to step 9 and rework the abstract to make it sharper and articulate the findings and contribution to knowledge much better. 3 steps. You choose the best set of keywords or key terms that describe the paper. You rework also the introduction to make it sharper if need be. You tweak the conceptual or theoretical framework to fit core insights from the analysis much better if needed. You then put acknowledgements, appendices, and you put a little biopic of yourself. Job done. So I've actually taken you through the framework we call structures for writing highly publishable papers. And I need to warn you that there's a little politics in paper reviews, so be very careful. You might even write a paper in this structure. Somebody who insists that he has not found something new you are saying will still reject. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you convince yourself that you added value, because if you can actually add value in up to 5 or 6 of the 7 areas, it's extremely difficult for a paper to be rejected. Most of the thing that happened with my paper is that they say, okay, we need improvements, edit, or a little correction, not rejection. So when you do that, they accept. So to me, it's a better way to deal with it. The next one is on this, but we've not exhausted, the thing about writing. So what I've done in some of the things I've sent to you is what I did recently, because we are training PhD texts in the Glottress platform, and they needed an example of how a paper was written using exactly these steps. And then after that, removing the headings to just make it simpler, I did a paper now, which took each of these steps one by one, by putting each section on top when I'm writing, so that somebody can see how it is done. Then later on, removing the steps to make the paper collapse into a more readable structure with fewer pages, and still send it to those people I'm training. I'm going to send those things to you people. This is a game you want to master, because after this event, we are going to call for submission of papers to our various journals in Africa world There's no paper to be accepted if it does not talk to this framework. So this is the training, it's a boot camp actually for publishing in AfriWorld Publishing, our own platform that does it better than contemporary journals. So that finishes that. The next one is writing proposals. Writing international conferences. There is a framework for structuring international conferences and schools and workshops. Everything is tooled in our system. Any questions so far on this? On the common structure? Again, I'm just winding down to look at the various stages, the abstract, the introduction. The point about this, it tells you the number of things you must do under each section to be safe. To be safe enough in making sense of what you've done. Well, you may say, okay, it's prescriptive, prescriptive, okay. Was it not because of the lack of detailed guidance that we mess about writing things and waiting to be, bludgeoned by editors? And we now start correcting and say, oh, why are these people punishing me? Because you've not actually systematized your thinking in an organic setup that tells everything to an examiner. You've not done that. This system helps you. Tell us, look, can we also, that's the exercise now for us, can we begin to think of how to even rewrite other papers we submitted to other journals before? Using these structures completely, the paper will look different. You can send it to us, we put it in one of our journals. See the impact. When people are reading it, compare it to the number of people that cite and read the other paper you wrote. You will see that there was apart. Why? This is a complete system. And I recommend this system. It's because I'm not finding this system used that I had to create the AfriWorld Publishing in order that we control the system and help our people to make their work meaningful and add more value to our countries and continents than we are currently doing.